Yeah, so welcome to our EU Green Week webinar organized by Generation Climate Europe. So today we'll be discussing the topic of inclusive, sustainable mobility, which we think is a very important topic because although that almost everyone recognizes the importance of traveling more sustainably, not everyone always has the means, financial or otherwise, to do so, meaning that sustainability and inclusivity don't always go hand in hand like they should do, because it's very important that they become mutually reinforcing forces, rather than kind of, sometimes it being a choice between one or the other. And we'll be discussing today how that can be achieved. So my name is Ruben. I am Generation Climate Europe's Clean Mobility Coordinator. And with me today are Malte and Morgan, who work in our Inclusive Sustainable Mobility team. And I'd like to give a warm welcome to our speakers. So we have Elisabeth Kotthaus from the European Commission. Elisabeth, you work for DG Move as head of Unit B5, focusing on social aspects, passenger rights, and equal opportunities. So you're a real mobility expert, and with an emphasis on the social aspects. So that's the combination we're looking for today. So it's great to have you here. We also have Malte Gallee. Malte, you're an MEP for the Greens, and you work a lot on sustainability topics, such as the new battery regulation and a new industrial strategy for a green Europe. But you also say that you specifically want to be a voice for young people in Europe. So that's a combination, again, sustainability and youth, which will come together in our workshop here today. And finally, last but not least, we have Deparnary-Grunenberg, also an MEP for the Greens, who serves on the Committee on Transport and Tourism. So another expert on mobility, this time from the European Parliament. So yeah, we're very, very happy to have you all here. So before we dive in, I'd like to give a little bit of a background on what Generation Climate Europe is and why we want to discuss this topic with you today. So we are a coalition of youth-led networks, including, for example, the Erasmus Student Network, ESN, and the EGEA. And we advocate for stronger climate action on the EU level. And we have a branch of national organizations in 46 different European countries, including all EU member states, which is something we believe to be very important as we aim to represent young people from Europe as a whole. And we were established quite recently in 2019, because we felt that although there are many youth organizations and many organizations focusing on sustainability, there was not really a united voice of the youth with regard to climate and sustainability. So GCE is trying to change this by being very actively engaged, like on the European level, in the policymaking process in various ways. So whether that's by responding to strategies put out by the European Commission or organizing youth dialogues with the European Parliament. We try to do that in different ways. And so it's also great to have representatives from different European institutions here today. So in general, we try to take a very holistic approach to sustainability. So we believe that sustainability shouldn't be just reserved for discussions on the environment, but should also be integrated in debates on other topics, such as human rights, education, inclusivity. And that's why, like in our event today, we're focusing on both sustainability and inclusivity. And that brings us to our topic specifically today, because one of the challenges for young Europeans today when traveling is often that even when they want to travel sustainably, often it's quite expensive. And that's something that, like as Generation Climate Europe and with our MOs, we're trying to address in various ways. For example, by forming partnerships with railway companies. The EU is also making steps, for example, by creating the green top-up of 50 euros for Erasmus students who take the train. But we feel like we need a little bit more, because often there's still a significant difference in price. And it's, like I said, it's vital that sustainability and inclusivity become mutually reinforcing. So yeah, and basically what we're going to do today, in order to have a look at the scale of the problem, we'll split up into breakout rooms in a moment, where participants can find and compare connections by plane and by train or bus between your current cities where you are now, or your home cities, wherever you prefer. So we can make a quick comparison. And then we'll give all of our three speakers 5 minutes to give their perspective on what they're doing to tackle this problem, what they feel needs to be done, what's being done well, what needs to be done more. And then we'll open the floor to more of a debate in which everyone is invited to give their opinions, their ideas, to ask questions, but also don't hesitate, to come forward with your own proposals and not just to ask questions. And finally, we'll also present GCE's perspective, as today we're also publishing our new position paper on sustainable mobility. So yeah, now I'll pass over to Morgane, who will introduce us to our interactive part.
Hi, thank you very much, Ruben, for the introduction. So now what we will do to kind of get a feel for the scale of the problem is to get into breakout rooms of about 3 participants for around 5 minutes. And the point is to, according to where everyone lives, is to look up online with the tools that we want to see how much it would cost to book a trip by train, bus, or other. And yes, and then we'll come back and discuss what we found. I hope this was insightful. Would there be anyone willing to share their experience of trying to book trains in comparison to planes? For example, what kind of online platforms did you use? And were there any obstacles to booking and using sustainable transport modes? If you just raise your hand on the little emoji. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can break the ice. So we looked into 2 connections. One was Lausanne-Brussels. And we figured out that, for example, by plane, it's always kind of the same price because it's a busy connection. It's around 100 something euros, depending on the time. And for the train, it's kind of the same, but the problem is it's always going to be cheaper if you take the plane, and it's also like there's also the option to take the bus, but it's less comfortable, cheaper, but less comfortable, a longer way. Another connection that we saw was Brussels, Barcelona, and that one was actually like the difference was more stark. The return flight was 160 euros, and the train was between 170 to 200 euros, just one way. The bus was I think 100 return, 120. But the problem is also it's very long, not as comfortable.
Does anyone want to share their kind of experience? Yes.
Yeah, I can go for it. We looked at Stuttgart to London, and actually we saw a difference if we want to travel tomorrow or maybe in 6 weeks. It's changed a lot. We looked together. Tomorrow, if you would like to fly, you have a direct flight from Stuttgart to London. It takes you 1 hour and 50 minutes, so really comfortable. And tomorrow you should pay 205 euro. That's the best price I found. And if you look for traveling by train, is a lot longer. Maybe you want to share our research. I think it was Emily in my group. She looked after the train connections. It was a lot longer and more difficult, even to get the informations. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think what we found is it could be anywhere between, it was somewhere around like 8 hours plus, and then anywhere between like 100 and 150 pounds, because you'd have to take a train from Stuttgart to Brussels or Paris or Amsterdam, and then get the train across the channel as well. And then for buses, I didn't know if we ended up finding anything on buses, but that also takes a long time.
Yeah, so 8 hours is really, really optimistic, because I just did Stuttgart-Brussels in 7 hours. So if you have to change in Brussels and to take the Eurostar, I would suppose 9 hours is really optimistic as well, but it could be done. But yeah, and we looked after that in the 14th of July. So when you're planning a little bit more in advance, you could fly for the same time with British Airways in 1 hour and 50 minutes for 50 euros to London by plane. And yeah, the train keeps the same, 8, 9, 10 hours and 150 pounds. So that's
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing all your experience. We clearly see that
the time of bus and also the number of hours we found out. So it's really long to travel.
Yeah, so we clearly see that often the incentive is to book low-cost flights for the moment. And this is why Malte will now lead a discussion on kind of possibilities that there are for policy at the EU level and how to solve this issue.
Yeah, so we've kind of highlighted the problem, and now I'm going to invite our 3 speakers to speak each for 5 minutes, starting with Malte, and I'll signal when your time is up.
Hello, hello. Do you hear me? Oh, perfect. Okay, nice. So yeah, first of all, hi everybody. I'm Malte Gallee. I'm a member of the parliament since January now, and well, I'm not working in a TRAN committee. I'm working in environment and consumer protection and development. But yeah, I have quite some opinions on how to travel sustainable or in a sustainable way, because I was trying to do so during the last years as well, also when I was no member of the European Parliament yet. For example, like I went to Istanbul from Berlin with a train, and this was like such a nice experience for me. And what because like in Eastern Europe, for example, there they still have all the old night trains that we had in Germany, like some years ago, decades ago, I would say. And this was just such a wonderful way to travel, and I was like, oh my god, why do we not have this in Germany anymore? So yeah, this is like one point that I think it's really important from a political side to enforce, even though I have to admit that all the political things to do there, Anna is the real professional on this. Then what really makes traveling, or the problem, the whole problem that we're looking at right now, and what was also mentioned right before, is that flying is just too cheap. And the big problem here is that it doesn't cost the real costs, you know, because like all the environmental destruction will be paid by others or by future generations. So it's not the question how to make trains cheaper. The question is like how to give the real price to the means of transport that we're using right now. And if we would price in all the costs of aviation and everything, then this would be far more expensive. And so I think it's really important to focus on, okay, how can we make it more expensive, but invest this extra money in better train connections, in night trains. But if we look at sustainable traveling, for example, this is something that is not so much connected to transport, but for me, for example, it was also always crucial, okay, where can I put up my tent? You know, if you want to travel sustainable or also cheap, or especially as young persons, I think it's really crucial to really lower the barriers. For example, for young people to just camp at the side or whatever, and to allow them, and not to be bound to camping sites where you have to pay 50 euros per night or whatever. So this is one point that I had in mind as well when I was thinking about okay, how can sustainable travel be more attractive to young people. Okay, I have no idea how many minutes I was talking. Malte, can you? I still have 1 minute. Woo! Okay. Yeah. As Ruben said in the very beginning, I ran for European Parliament to also be the voice of young people, and yeah, I'm just a really small part of all the young people in Europe. So if you have anything in mind, I'm really happy if you contact me and I can be your voice in this spaceship European Parliament. Woo!
Thank you very much, Malte. I'll now pass the floor on to Anna.
Thank you to everybody being here, and thank you for the first exercise we made together. So I will just make a few points. I cannot develop all things we could do at the European Parliament and also at the European Union. But of course, Malte told it, we have to internalize the externalities. That's really our big job, to look what are the costs of transport and to make the price real. But at the end, if we make the price real, we have to see also it's going to be much more expensive as we think. Of course, flying will be more expensive, but also traveling sustainably by train, obviously, could be not so cheap that we want. And we want people to travel and to meet each other. We want European integration, so we have to act for that as a society. And I think to have this inclusiveness, we have also to look after an easy booking and easy traveling informations. That's really what we can work on, to have an Europe-wide ticketing, that you take not only the information, but also your rights. So when you're missing one train, you can take another one, but your rights as a passenger, you can take them with you. And that's not how the framework works at total today. So we have to improve that. It's getting better with a new passenger rights regulation we're going to have, but it's not fulfilled in my point of view. For example, also, if you want to travel your bike with you, we had that in the discussion before. That's really important that you have the information if you can or not, and how you can pay that, and make it really easy for people taking their time, investing their own time for the climate, and make it not a lot more difficult and even more expensive. We see the real discussion on the European level and the different member states on this competition in the rail sector. Can it bring better prices? In some cases, with WeGo and Flixtrain, we see that it works. In other contexts, it's really difficult that the market provide new relationships and cheaper mobility for everybody, and of course for young people. And in France and Belgium have good example for good travel conditions for young people. We can see that SNCF, RATP, they're just proposing lower prices for student people under 26. And also the city of Paris is now evaluating the idea to render transport for free for young people. So those ideas are coming now, and we see it in Germany also with the €9 tickets, more on the regional level. But we will evaluate all this stuff, and the idea that the price is not so important for people choosing their transport, I think we will revive that. That's not for granted that it's like that. And the national and regional government and parliaments have huge responsibility on that. The EU cannot fix the prices. We can do some good framework that competition is better, and we can fulfill also maybe regulation on PSO, that's a personal service obligation. So when we see there is a lack of transport somewhere, we can have some kind of subsidizing them. But at the end, we will have a market that should function as its such. And but of course, attracting young people, making mobility attractive for young people is the aim of a sustainably enterprise, because they want to gain you for the whole life. So they should be really good thinking about how to mobilize young people to come. And with the night train, we have also really difficult frameworks, because we see that they're in direct concurrence with another thing. What as a green we want is a transport for goods, as a freight coming by train. And so we see the network is really too narrow on some point of view. So we have also with the TNT regulation a big job to do, that we have enough network to fulfill the train relationship of the future. And but I want to jump back, and that would be my last sentence on this easy booking, easy traveling, easy information. That's really something the EU could do, being more strong on pushing the operators in all Europe to share their data. So they are not handling with them, but you as a young people, you have the information, you can deal with that. And even you can have really interesting platforms helping you to find the cheapest. And that's not possible today because we are not strong enough at the EU level to say to the operator, but give out, please, all your data. So I'm working on that and all the other network stuff and PSO regulation. And I'm really happy to hear what would be interesting for you, reduction for Erasmus or other type of ideas coming up today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. And finally, we'll hear from Elisabeth.
I'm muted, sorry. So hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me for this conference here. And I'm the head of unit for social aspects in transport, passenger rights, and equal opportunities. And just a brief overview what we are doing in that respect regarding social aspects. We work quite heavily to find the good equilibrium between what we need as a sustainable travel experience, also among young people on the one side, but also the social aspects not to be forgotten. And we discussed it just before. Price sensitivity of people is nevertheless rather high. So it plays really a role whether you can afford a certain journey or not. Certainly preferably the cheapest is also the most sustainable way of transport, but that is certainly quite a challenge to be achieved. So what do we do from our side? So for young people on the social aspect, we work also closely with our colleagues in the Director General for Education and Culture on Erasmus. There are special promotions to use trains to support if people use train, young people who are supported by Erasmus. So for example, that they can also stay longer and get financial support if they use low carbon transport. We have this Discover EU project where 35,000 free Interrail tickets are open for young EU citizens, which just became they are above 18. So we try also to convince young people who haven't used rail very much until now to really use it. And not everyone had the advantage of having, as I was when I was young, I had quite some brothers and sisters, and we got a 50% reduction as teenagers and students anyway, because we were a family with many kids. And often I was the only one of my friends using the train at the time, because I was the only one who could really afford it without any problems. Yeah. So that is, I think price is really an issue. And when we just discussed among the three of us how we choose our journeys from here to Berlin, from here to southwest of Germany, from here to Utrecht, we all concluded we all use the train. We all have reduction cards like Bahncard or the NS reduction card, and we try to book early so to have cheap tickets, but then certainly that limits you a bit, but at least you can travel rather okay-ish, yeah, regarding the price. But you have to take these extra measures. And what we do on EU level, again, also for young people is also, I think, what is very important if you look on from the social aspect side on it, that we have also young people working in the transport sector, that they come in with their interests, that they are interested in working for different transport operators and bring in these wishes you are just also expressing. And what we try to do is we have for women and girls the platform for women in transport, a platform for change, where we exchange with all kinds of stakeholders how we could make transport more attractive to women and girls, but also to young people in general. We have also now developed this toolkit, an educational toolkit for primary and secondary children, which deal with the transport professions and show them that transport, first of all, that the captain must not always be male and the stewardess not always be female, but also that transport has to offer really interesting jobs. And if you want to contribute to sustainable mobility, you are there at the right place. And then we have also, I think, very important now the new urban mobility framework from the EU level, and it's for the first time that we have a financial connection between the Trans-European Network for Transport and financial aid and sustainable urban mobility. Because normally this is, as you know, in the EU, we have a multi-governance system, and normally you have the lower level is for the member states and the regions and cities, and only the larger distances across borders is then something for the EU. But there we could really make a connection. And if you look into this EU urban mobility framework, you see also a lot of things regarding also, let's say, healthy mobility, as a meaning micro-mobility and bikes and scooters, and which really tries to promote these kind of cheap and also healthy mobility issues. And also cycling is also plays there really an important part. And we hope by this kind of connection between the financial part and the policy part that we can really give a push on also more sustainable urban mobility. So I stop here. I'm happy to take any questions. I hope I'm more or less in my time frame, and I hand back to our moderators.
Yes, thank you so much for those really interesting insights on what the EU is currently doing and what you believe should be done. So we're now going to start about a 10-15 minute debate. I really want to stress that this isn't just a Q&A for our speakers. It's also an opportunity for everyone to kind of voice their opinion on what you think should be done. So if you have something that you would like to, a point that you would like to raise, please raise your hand, or if you have a question, please raise your hand. So I'm just going to start with sorry, let me just share my screen. So the first question, the framework that I want to think about, and maybe to ask each of our speakers first, is what could and should we be able to achieve in the next 12 months?
If I may start, so for the next 12 months, we have quite a lot of proposals we are working on and impact assessments. One is making passenger rights more resilient, and also check what kind of rights we need for multimodal transport, so that people really, if they use several transport modes, that they can travel more seamlessly. And we are working, what also Anna has mentioned, we work on multimodal data, so data transfers and access to data, so that also online intermediaries can more easily offer make mobility offers, that they can get access to the data on a fair and transparent manner. I think that are really important proposals in the context of mobility on which we are working at the moment.
Should I maybe jump in? Yes. What could we achieve in the next 12 months? I have 2 points. The first one, we have the rail action plan that we have to discuss in the parliament and really put some strong words, but also the social aspect in the development of rail is really, really important for young people and also for the future, for everybody. And I will work on that with the Commission together. That will be a great job. Of course, make some pressure around those discussions. That helps. That can, could be achieved in the next 12 months. And also being really political. We see in which kind of rhythm we are changing regional level governments, national governments. It's really, really important that young people say out loudly, we want to have better transport and transformation towards climate-friendly mode of transport. That's also a question of money. It's also a question of reliability and affordability. And just put your voice up and really ask all political for trains or for other sustainable modes that we can achieve together in the next 12 months.
Well, the very first point that came to my mind was actually, well, I don't know how, but for example, if we, well, it would be easily doable, just allow in every member country that cyclists are allowed to ride next to each other on the road. Because this is a huge problem. I mean, like I did some bike tours. I mean, like we all agree this is like the most sustainable way you can travel ever. But in some places, it's just not allowed to ride next to each other. You are forced to ride like behind each other, and this is not fun at all. So yeah, this is just one super little thing one could do, we could do to make sustainable travel more attractive, to really grant cyclists the right to do exactly the same thing as people in cars do, like sitting next to each other.
Yes, that's really interesting. So yeah, if anyone else has any points that they'd like to make on this topic, please raise your hand. Or if, okay, yeah, Roland, you can go for it.
Thank you, Malte, and thank you all for a very interesting discussion up until now. Wander and I had a question specifically with regard to the inclusivity of sustainable transport. Also, Wander, please fill me in if I forget to say anything. But we have noticed that many of the initiatives aimed at making transport cheaper for young people of the European Union tend to sometimes kind of equate young people with university students, making sustainable transport very accessible to those who are, dare I say, elites kind of already, and a little bit less accessible to those who aren't really connected to the European Union because they are not studying, they're not doing higher education at the moment. Is there any policy to kind of like prioritize non-university educated groups present within sustainable transport? Do you feel like? My question?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's also a problem within the member states. So it's not just EU policy that tends to do this equation.
That's true. It also holds for the Netherlands.
Yeah, if I may reply on that, maybe. Also, so for the Discover EU, that is really independent of any educational level. That is open for everyone. And I think for Erasmus, but I'm not a specialist in that, maybe the others know that better, but I think it's also Erasmus, there is a possibility now that it's extended for people who do another vocational training and not only at university level training.
Yes, thank you. Does anyone else have anything they would like to say on this topic, or shall I move on to the next topic? Okay, I'll move on to the next question. So one of the main things, so the main priority of GCE, of Generation Climate Europe, is that young people are at the center of these policies. And obviously that's what we're talking about today. It's about youth perspectives. So I want to ask our speakers, how can we meaningfully engage young people in these policies and make them aware kind of what options are available to them? And yes, that's what I'd like to ask.
So who wants to start? Should I again, or would you like to, Malte, Anna?
I have some ideas. I don't know. Of course, we have some petitions at the European level. You can create one. Some are really becoming huge. But as we all know, it's really difficult to say how and why and which kind of NGO are going to jump on a topic when. And but that's really something that works. It makes what people are feeling and seeing that it's an evidence that we know that if we want to tackle climate change, we need better transport. And if we want better transport, we need a cheaper train and better way to go by bike. And of course, we have to make that's what we want the people to go and to step in, make it better and make it cheaper. So it's a kind of evidence. But really engagement from young people can be everywhere. At your own school and your university, you're looking, maybe making some surveys, how the people are coming. Can we group people? Can they help each other? Can we rent bikes? You can also now, I've seen that in Germany a lot, it's spreading like mushrooms. You can have an enterprise going to a bike shop, and you can do leasing for your employees. And it's just taking off from the salary each month. And at the end, from 36 months, for instance, you can buy your own leased bike if you want or not. And we see that more than 95% of people, they're buying it after, because they had the choice to really see if I want a cargo bike or electro bike or a normal one, or I don't know what the pleasure of to have such. And that's the kind of program you can really engage at your place where you are. So look how the people are moving themselves and help and have creative ideas.
And if I may add, and also then see that young people also enter the mobility professions. It's very important. We have a huge problem that we have an aging workforce. You see that, for example, in rail, but also in the other, in road, we have a huge problem that many will retire, and there are not enough young people coming into these professions. And if you come in with your let's say with the impetus also to really make the Green Deal work, that we find mobility patterns which really help to move around with public transport, who is sustainable and accessible and more or less seamless, and which is also available in regions and not only in the centers of the city. So that would really help, and that solutions are found where you are a bit in the rural area, and where you are more or less often forced to have a car, because otherwise there is not even a bus who would serve these regions. So I think the engagement of young people to make these all the areas better accessible by public transport, so also that that people can live and work in more rural areas, is extremely important. And what we try to do, as I mentioned before, is really to work on this platform for change, that we really see what are the best practices. Some have really good ideas, that we promote them, and that we not to forget also to include young people with disabilities and reduced mobility. Yeah, so we try really to have in each passenger transport mode passenger rights for people with disabilities and with reduced mobility, so that they are not disencouraged to move around and to get, to participate in public life. That is also extremely important.
Yes, thank you. I'll pass the floor to Evelina now.
I just have a thing. Maybe you can first go to Malte, because I have a point of last question I didn't get to ask actually, because I couldn't find a hand thing, but I would be happy to take the question afterwards.
Okay, I would just drop one little point that I have on this, like engage young people. Well, I think this has to start far more early, like even for children. I mean, like if we want people to really ride bikes, we should make them get used to ride bikes, and you just train the habits. If you never rode bikes in your youth, why should you go traveling on bikes later on? And so I think it's a really, really important political task. Of course, this is mainly on a national or even regional level, but to put children on bicycles. I mean, like I grew up in a village of 28 inhabitants. There was no bus. I grew up at 650 meters on the wonderful, beautiful Schwäbische Ostalb, and there I had to ride my bicycle to get to places, But I mean, like this was only because I was forced to. I was forced to ride my bike, and this is why nowadays I love to ride my bike. But yeah, I think this is we should give free bikes to all the children in Europe. This would be a really good agenda I would support.
And safe bike infrastructure, I would add. But also, I totally agree. Just one thing about the 12-month plan that I would like to ask the three of you, or put the topic on the table, is you've probably are all aware about this insane policy that all planes have to now continue to fly even when they're empty to keep their slots in airports. I actually talked about it with Lufthansa people, and they were like, we wish that this was somehow changed, because we also lose a lot of money with this, but it's not up to us, it's actually up to the EU. And so this is typically, to me, the kind of nonsense policies that I am not an expert in aviation policies, but I can see that if there's one thing that would be potentially very, very easy and very impactful to change, would be something like that, to just make sure that no plane is at least flying empty for no reason. So I'm just wanted to ask, how is it going? Why is it still there? And why has it not changed yet?
I can jump on that, and it's a really good question. I had the same feeling as I saw the first articles coming up in Germany during the pandemic with the ghost flights, and we worked on that. What really first to understand is that the aviation are really good and strong sector to make their point heard. They have strong lobby. I feel much more than train. And but we have a kind of competition on the big airports. That's a fact. Heathrow, London, or Frankfurt am Main, or Paris. We have really competition on that. And you know the problem we don't want as a citizens and either other society that the playing ground becomes bigger and bigger. So they have to really fight to have their slot. And at the end, they could let them slot, and they don't have to fly empty, but they don't want to lose the slot. And because they know and they think they want to make the money next year and the year after, they prefer to fly empty. But what they wanted to do is to break the rules. They don't have to fly at all, but they keep the slots. And that was a little bit a discussion, really complicated one, because on the one time we were really agree that it's nonsense to have this ghost flight. And they were not completely empty, but they were so empty, maybe with 10 or 20% of the seat, that normally they are not a business case anymore. But they cannot just cancel them because they are losing after the slot for the next years, and they didn't want. So they make also this kind of a climate bashing, and from the EU Commission, look at the stupid rules that the EU is making against our climate. They made those blaming, I felt also to have in French we will say the la beurrière et le beurre. So they wanted everything. They wanted to keep the slots, to be in the competition, and to have more money next year, but also they didn't want to fulfill the guarantee they gave. So it was a really complicated play we let them some slot, of course, in the pandemic, but we couldn't come back to all that what they want. Because at the end, it's also a guarantee for you as a citizen when you want a fly and you are looking for a price and you're planning a trip. If all the company would just say, okay, now I have just 30% of my flights are full, I just cancel it. It will be a mega chaos. And at the end, you don't have, you want and you need a kind of guarantee. So it's really a difficult stuff, and I felt I was like you at the beginning, really, really upset on the Commission on those rules. And at the end, I had a sense of, okay, you have people in the background that are also taking the climate argument, just not to fly because they want to save their business. That is in this case as aviation, not really climate friendly. So I would let it like that now.
Yeah, if I may add on this, so indeed there was a lot of discussion on these EU slot reliefs, and there were also parliamentary questions on this, and the Commission has also officially replied to that. And we can only say that we haven't received any evidence that airlines need to operate empty or almost empty flights to maintain their airport slots. So because the EU slot relief rules prevent such risks. The EU slot relief rules aim to, on the one hand, prevent economic and environmental damage during the COVID-19 pandemic, and on the other, ensure that airport capacity is used efficiently for the benefit of consumers and connectivity. So first of all, there is a reduction of the standard use it rate of 80% to 50% for the winter 21-22 scheduling season. This rate has been set based on a wide range of evidence, including Eurocontrol air traffic forecasts and data gathered from the market participants. And second, to cover for the unexpected developments, airlines have a possibility to request slot coordination to apply justified non-use exception, so-called JNUS, in case of government restrictions at either end of the route to prevent airlines from operating the flight. So this provision has been very effective in dealing with unexpected and sudden measures, such as the ones adopted following the outbreak of the Omicron variant, for example. And finally, if airlines choose to operate so-called empty flights, they intend to prevent competition on those routes. Hence, the airline's decision does not only harm the environment, but also consumers. It is not caused by the EU slot relief rules. So as we monitor the situation and liaise with the stakeholders to ensure that the rules are applied in a uniform and transparent manner, and we will see whether we have to take further action if this is necessary. And the considerations with regard to sustainability and the resilience of the EU rules will be present in any future revision of the rules. And we take that really very seriously and look what's happening on the ground. And we are trying to really do evidence-based policy here. And that, as I just said, was really an issue that we haven't got really clear evidence on all this. So as Ms. Grunenberg Anna said, this is a bit of a complicated issue, and it's not such a black and white story here with the so-called empty flights. And regarding passenger rights, certainly you can, they are not, airlines don't have to pay compensation if they change the flight 14 days ahead of the departure. So they have then certainly to reroute and give other proposals for flights, but they are not forced to maintain a certain flight. So that is really also a commercial decision. So it is really a complicated setup, and there are many factors who play in this.
Yeah, unfortunately we're out of time, so I'm just going to pass on to Ruben, who is going to share GCE's position on this and promote our position paper that was published yesterday.
Yes, thank you very much everyone for participating, first in the little exercise we did and then in debates. I think we touched upon a lot of interesting topics. Yeah, we're a couple of minutes over time, so I'll keep this very brief and not summarize what we discussed too much. But I would like to just steer everyone's attention towards our position paper, because I've sent the link in a chat and we'll also email it to you afterwards. But basically, in this position paper, we're doing exactly what Anna touched upon, what she wants the younger generations to do, and that is to call out, give their opinion on mobility, and stress how important mobility is to them, and also come up with a lot of our ideas. I mean, the position paper is basically a 2-year process. We originally wrote like a 100-page document based on a lot of research. We actually published that, and then we decided probably if we want anyone to read it, we need to scale it down a little bit. So that's the version we're publishing here. It's down to sort of 15 pages of core issues. So yeah, please give it have a look, because it touches upon all kinds of things. So like in the debate like we just had here now, we moved beyond plane train discussion to bring in bikes, for example, like Malte did. Elisabeth touched upon the urban mobility framework and the importance of connecting like the trans-European issues to the local level and connecting urban and rural mobility. Those topics are also discussed, for example, in our position paper. So yeah, please have a read, and if you have any, you know, want to address on that, things that you feel like, you know, questions you have, always feel free to get in touch with us. Yeah, I think if we can go to the next slide, Marta, there's our yeah, here's all our social media information. So, you know, if anyone would like to get in touch with us, whether it's ideas you want to get promoted, or whether you want to get in touch in our work, please don't hesitate to do so. And yeah, then finally, I can just say thank you very much to everyone, especially our three speakers, for being here today and for, you know, engaging in such a good discussion. Yeah, and keep up the good work. And if you need more inspiration for good work, check out our position paper.